Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the March 26th Community Services Committee meeting to order. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. The land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandrak, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and Grimsby stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? Okay, seeing none. Before we approve the agenda, our Deputy Clerk has an addition to note.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Councillor Sharwa, yourself, has brought forward a notice of motion on shoreline protection that will be read under other business this evening.
Thank you, Katie. Can I get a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Okay, moved by Councillor DeFlavio, seconded by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the March 22nd or 26th, 2024 Community Services Committee agenda be approved as amended. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Receipt of previous minutes. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive the previous minutes? Okay, moved by Member Laird, seconded by Member Bennett. Resolved that the following minutes be received. Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, February 21st, 2024. Community Services Committee, February 27th, 2024. Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, February 27th, 2024. Culture Advisory Committee, March 7th, 2024. Age Friendly Advisory Committee, March 19th, 2024. Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, March 20th, 24. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And there is a staff memorandum on the agenda that responds to a motion from the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee regarding the draft public tree bylaw. Can I get a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor for discussion? Okay, moved by Councillor Korstanji, seconded by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the memorandum, oh, sorry.
No, just Thomas.
Thomas, if you can get us started, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight. Through you, Chair, what we have here tabled is a memo from staff regarding the proposed bylaw for public trees, or that's the short that we're calling it effectively. It's a tree to regulate how staff handle trees on public ground, so maintenance, planting, anything surrounding that. This bylaw has gone back and forth with the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee several times now. We've received feedback from them. Staff have reviewed feedback. We've viewed the comments. We've made adjustments and amendments to the bylaw. At this point, we did return to the committee last week on the 20th, returning with a bylaw that we had proposed to bring to council, at which point there was a motion put on the floor to have staff, I guess, review more comments again further, bring it back to committee prior to bringing it to council. The memo here is a request from staff basically saying we would like to move forward to council with this. We have it on the floor here to be reviewed by this committee. Staff would like to hear feedback and comments from committee here. We'll take those under advisement, but we would like to move forward with this bylaw. Effectively, the bylaw as proposed is something that staff feel is right in line with many municipal bylaws out there currently. We did look at best practice. City of Burlington, Oakville, as well as a lot of local municipalities in Niagara region here. It's really something that staff feels is what can be done with the current resources we have available to us. Wouldn't put any extra burden on the staff. And really it's just kind of affirming current practices with what we do. It also provides us with the tools that are needed. So currently we don't have really any means for enforcing how trees are handled on public lands. We don't have any recourse. The bylaw team can't actually levy any tickets for someone for harming trees on public lands at this point in time. So this bylaw would in effect give us that tool that's needed. So I'll just leave it at that for now and answer any questions that you may have.
So we'll just open the floor for discussion. Member Bennett?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to locate this bylaw because I didn't notice it. It was sort of referenced in the agenda, but I've been looking around and I'm not sure what it entails.
Katie?
Through you, Chair. So it was on the Grimsby Green, the previous Grimsby Green agenda. In hindsight, we should have included it as an appendix sort of to the memo on this agenda, but it was on the Grimsby Green agenda.
It's just, I read that, but it didn't pop out at me. So that's why could we summarize it maybe? Is that possible?
Could we summarize it, please, Thomas?
Yes, so through you, Chair. So the bylaw that we're proposing right now, again, it's in draft form, and the request is to bring it towards council now just for their review and comment. In effect, it is regarding the maintenance, planting, and care of trees on public land. So the public right-of-way, basically the road system that we have, parklands, as well as cemeteries. Within the bylaw, it's basically establishing what staff or what the directors can do. So the directors being basically directors of public works and of community services. So just outlining effectively their roles and responsibilities being planting, maintaining, or directing to have planted and maintained trees on our lands, as well as briefly outlining sort of when trees would be removed. As well, maybe and more importantly, it adds the restrictions of what the public cannot do on our land. So basically, we don't want people removing trees, planting trees, harming trees, any types of those things, as well as outlining some parameters for when construction projects are going on private lands, if it would impact public trees on the road allowance, what some restrictions might be there.
And I guess it also includes sort of the parameters for the town, that what they can impose as well, right? Is what the public can do and what the town can do as well?
Through you, Chair. So yes, it does outline what the town, are you meaning in terms of what staff can do, like planting trees, removing trees, that type of work, or maintaining trees, basically pruning in that regard?
I guess I'm thinking about, because I know something's come up where there's been a diseased tree and, residents will try and maintain it, and town and the residents have discrepancies about whether it should be taken down or not, like things like that.
Through you, Chair. So the bylaw again proposed outlines how staff can handle trees on public lands. It would also speak to trees on private land that are an immediate risk to the roadway or the right-of-way. In those situations where it would be on private property but impacting public property, the Municipal Act gives the town the right to treat that tree as required. Now, staff aren't imposing or walking onto property cutting down trees as we have to. I mean, that's a case-by-case scenario.
And includes boundary trees, I guess, too?
I mean, again, through you, Chair, so it would include boundary trees, but again, we don't discuss boundary trees necessarily. It's either public lands or a private tree that impacts the roadway or the public
okay.
land.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any other members that would like to speak? No. Okay, resolve that the memorandum regarding the public tree bylaw be received and that the Community Services Committee recommend the draft public tree bylaw be forwarded to council for approval. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Moving on to discussion reports. We have a discussion report. Oh, thank you, Thomas. Thank you. We have a discussion report on establishing an art gallery special purpose advisory committee. Can I get a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor for discussion? Okay, moved by Member Laird and seconded by Member Korstanji. Perfect. Thank you. Caitlin or Sarah, if you can get us started.
I just wanted to kick it off and welcome Caitlin to our meeting. If you haven't met Caitlin before, Caitlin Sutherland is our art gallery manager, and she's going to give you some details about the report.
Thank you. Through the chair. So the Grimsby Public Art Gallery, based on discussion that we've had with Ontario Arts Council in order to maintain our operating funding, requires the establishment of an independent advisory body in order to continue receiving funding from the Ontario Arts Council. So in terms of just some brief background on that, this has been going on for a couple of years. Alex Hartstone, who's on leave as the art gallery manager curator, had been in conversation with the OAC back towards the establishment of the Culture Advisory Committee. And at that time, it seemed that that committee would be sufficient in order to meet the eligibility requirements of Ontario Arts Council. It's since come to our attention that it does not, because it's not an advisory body that is solely responsible for the art gallery, which is the main kind of component of their eligibility requirements. So we are recommending the establishment of a special purpose advisory committee for the art gallery in order to maintain that funding and the accompanying terms of reference. And since this report was submitted, we have confirmed with the OAC that what we have proposed here they have agreed that it meets the eligibility requirements and we can continue to receive funding from them. So this has a 3-year impact in terms, it's a 3-year operating program. And so that would maintain this approximately $26,000 operating grant for the next 3 years.
Councillor DeFlavio?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. We had an Art Gallery Advisory Committee for decades. What happened to the Art Gallery Advisory Committee? Why did it cease to exist? Through you, Chair.
Okay, Director Sweeney?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So one of the things we talked about a little while ago when we were looking at our committees was, could we do things differently or better? And we did decide to go towards more of a culture committee and combine the two. We were at times having trouble fulfilling all of the roles, and even just maybe, the content, just looking at how do we, a lot of collaboration already does exist between the Art Gallery Museum and maybe even more, other culture components more broadly as well. So that was sort of the intention of putting them together. And as Caitlin mentioned at that time, we did make sure that both of the granting bodies that support both of the entities were okay with it. We were under the impression it was, however, we've learned we need to do it differently. So I think this would satisfy that OAC funding, which is very important to the art gallery, and still also create a mechanism for us to talk about culture more collectively and more broadly and more on the community basis. I don't know if Caitlin mentioned as well, this new committee would meet quarterly, so I think in terms of, it's not a hefty time commitment, I'm going to say, but I think a valuable one.
Councillor DeFlavio?
Through you, Chair. I'm happy to see it coming back. I think that, having been involved with art gallery events several times in the past, the Art Gallery Advisory Committee was always really valuable in volunteering at things like Ways Goose and other events at the gallery. So it's always good to have a group of people that you can rely on. And that's why I was surprised when the advisory committee was, taken apart or put together with another committee, because the art gallery is a very specific thing, and you get a group of people that are dedicated to that entity, which means that when you have those events, it's great to have those people for the openings and for the other things like that. I poured wine at gallery openings and things like that because I have my Smart Serve. So it's great to have that group of people to fall back on whenever you need them, and I'm happy to see it coming back. So yeah, and I'm assuming other than advertising for members, there's no cost associated with that, with the board?
Through the chair. No, not really. There's staff time in terms of the quarterly meetings, but myself and Alex, when she returns, we're salaried, so it doesn't really represent any budgetary implications outside of receiving funding in the revenue side.
Okay, resolved that report DCS 2414, Art Gallery Special Purpose Advisory Committee dated March 26, 2024 be received, and that Community Services Standing Committee recommend council approve the establishment of the Special Purpose Advisory Committee for Grimsby Public Art Gallery as presented. All in favor? It's carried. Other business. So I have brought forward a notice of motion regarding shoreline protection, and I will read the notice of motion, and then following that, I'm going to ask to suspend the rules, but I will start with reading my notice of motion. So I'll just wait for, I'll wait for the clerk to put it up. Perfect. Okay. Shoreline protection. Whereas Grimsby Council identified protection for our natural environment, including strategic investments in parkland and trails as strategic priorities for the 2022 to 2026 term, and whereas the town of Grimsby's parks are well used by residents and support their physical, spiritual, mental, social, and emotional well-being, and whereas waterfront parks are key Grimsby landmarks that need strategic investments for continued use and protection from climate change, and whereas Nellis Beach Park, Murray Park, and Whitaker Park have suffered considerable damage from erosion which has deteriorated public parkland, and whereas erosion has caused the town of Grimsby to close beach access to Nellis, Whitaker, and Murray Park beaches over the years, and whereas the town of Grimsby has not invested in erosion protection at a time when it is most needed for the future of our parks. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Grimsby research shoreline protection measures to slow the erosion of Nellis Beach Park, Whitaker Park, and Murray Park, and provide an update to council about potential costs, grants available, and money from parkland reserves that can be used to fund these strategic investments. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given in consideration at the April 23rd, 2024 Community Services Committee meeting. So I would like to suspend the rules of procedure to discuss my notice of motion at tonight's meeting. Before we get a seconder, I'll be vacating the seat as chair to engage in discussion on it, and our vice chair, Councillor Kristangi, will take my place.
Councillor Charaw has moved to suspend the rules of procedure. Is there a seconder? Okay, Councillor DeFlavio seconds the motion.
I apologize, Chair, but other people might not, if they're not familiar with the way that committees work, might not be familiar with what's happening right now, so you might want to just review the procedural, what's happening procedurally, just to give people information.
Okay, thank you. I will ask our clerk to go over that. Thank you, Katie.
No problem, through you, Chair. So typically with a notice of motion, when it's put on an agenda, it is discussed at the next meeting. This is just a notice of motion. With that said, in our procedural bylaw, members are able to request to suspend the rules of procedure in order to discuss the motion at that meeting. So that is sort of what's going on now. We've put a motion on the floor, or we will be putting a motion on the floor to suspend the rules. The committee will vote on it. Once that's voted, whether it passes, then the motion will be discussed at tonight's meeting. So it just sort of takes away that, that waiting of a month to have the motion come back to the committee for actual discussion, and then it further prolongs it for staff to come back with a report. So for some timely situations, that's sort of some reasoning behind why a member would request to suspend the rules. And it does require 2/3 majority.
So we have a motion on the floor to suspend the rules of procedure, and we have a seconder. So, so we're doing a recorded vote for this? Okay.
Councillor Howe?
No.
Councillor DeFlavio? Yes. Councillor Sharwa?
Yes.
Member Bennett?
Yes.
Member Breather?
Yes.
He's online, thank you. Member Laird?
Yes.
And Councillor Korsanji?
Yes.
Okay, and that carries.
Resolved that the rules of procedure be temporarily suspended by an affirmative vote of 2/3 to discuss Councillor Charaw's notice of motion on shoreline protection. So Councillor Charaw has moved her notice of motion. Is there a seconder? Member Bennett?
Okay, thank you. So obviously, as a Ward 3 councillor, this is a pretty big issue in our area. Those 3 parks that I spoke of are in dire need of protection from erosion. I don't know if you can bring up the pictures. I took some pictures yesterday. I did not include Whitaker, however. That was kind of an afterthought at that time, but it's quite bad as well. So these are 4 photos I took from Nellis Beach Park. So you can see it's blocked off, and it's usually blocked off in the summer as well. You can't get down to the beach necessarily anymore because the water's just right there to the step. You can't get around to the beach. And then you can see in the 4th picture, it's just so eroded, and at the very top is where the pirate ship, everybody calls it the pirate ship playground, is right there. It's getting very close. So, you know, it's chipping away at the parkland that is very well used by the community and visitors to our community. And if you can go to the next one, Katie. So that was Nellis Beach Park. That one's the worst. And the top photo kind of shows you that playground area. And then I just took the 2 pictures. You can't really see a little bit of a glare there. These are from Murray Park, and they're not quite as bad. And I'm up for for recommendations from community services as well, our community services director, if that's not quite as bad. And then Whitaker Park, if you're familiar with that, that's in between those 2 parks, and it is really bad. However, that's not really a location that people necessarily tend to get access to the beach, but again, that's another one that needs protection. So I'd like to just get this out there and see, you know, grant money available or reserves available, how we can preserve this as best we can, because once we lose it, it's gone. Councillor DeFlavio? Oh.
Councillor DeFlavio?
Through you, Chair. So I've got a question through you to Sarah. Sarah, usually this goes through Public Works because shoreline protection, even though it's parkland, has traditionally been done by Public Works. I can think of a couple of major grants that we've received at the end of Casablanca. One for, I think, $1.1 million when we did the groins at the end of Casablanca. Is it appropriate for it to come through this committee, or would this committee, I guess it doesn't really matter because it's just an investigation. So if you can speak to that. So I think that investigation is fine, and trying to find money wherever we can is fine as well. But I want to make sure that we're doing it through the right channels.
Yeah, so through the chair, both of the projects are in our capital forecast for us. We are of course working with our Public Works partners on it, but it is considered a parkland project, and that it wouldn't be only looking at shoreline, it probably is looking at the park a little bit more broadly as well, as it should, right? In terms of those other pieces. So I am happy to bring back some more information. I don't have it all for you here today, but certainly Whitaker and Nellis are both in our capital forecast plan. So happy to come back with some more of what that looks like, what that timing is. There is some funding resources we can use, and again, working with Public Works and our finance team as well as to what options might be available depending on what we decide to do, because there are a variety of different options that we can choose that have different impacts on the park experience as well.
Through you, Chair. So when we did the end of Casablanca, one of the reasons why it was so important for us to get it done quickly was the speed at which we were losing shoreline. So if we have that kind of information, brought back to us, it's what we need to make an informed decision. So we were losing a meter a year at one point at the end of Casablanca. So spending that money was necessary, or else Casablanca would have been in the lake at some point. So we definitely needed to do that work. If staff can come back with how much we're losing, and because the photos, as much as I trust them, it's hard to tell by eye, because lake water levels go up and down on a yearly basis, and there are lots of things that fluctuate. So if we have GIS kind of information that shows us shoreline loss and things like that we can use to make an informed decision, that will help us to make that decision when we get to it. But I think the investigation part, which is what's being asked for tonight, is I think it's an easy one, hopefully, that we can just get the ball started to say, these are the kinds of grants that are out there, this is the money that's available, so I'll vote yes on that one.
Thank you. Anyone else for discussion? Member Bennett?
I'm not sure what your provisions are or what you're planning, thank you. But I would love to see the beach come back at Nellis Park, for one. And I know, I'm wondering if the beach is being affected, I can't remember the name of the street, in between Maple, Stonegate, there's a beach there? Morrison, that's, I know it starts with an M. But it seems to be more stable, right? Yeah, but Nellis, yeah, that would be great, because that was a nice beach at one time, just saying.
Sarah?
The Morrison Park, through you, Chair, sorry, the Morrison Park is quite flat, so that erosion factor isn't quite there. One thing just to note for Nellis Lake Beach is a lot of people think it's being closed because of the erosion. It's actually the high water levels. A lot of times there's actually no beach to be had, so in those situations, it's really not deemed swimmable, so that's why. So just for clarification, there are certainly erosion issues, and not in any way saying there isn't, but the closures are actually largely because there has often been no beach. That's how high the water has been. And again, happy to bring back some more information. We've actually done quite a bit of work as a team more broadly as well, so happy to bring back some more information about what we're trying to work on.
Thank you. Councillor Schwa?
Through you, Chair, thank you. Just a question about the railings. This is a little off topic, but I wasn't sure whether last year, whether that was also played a factor into why some of them were closed off. Are the railings completely okay there? I wasn't sure.
Sarah?
Through the Chair, you're talking about Nellis, correct? Yes, so because again of the high water, it's really affected that entranceway. So the railings and the ramping that was there, we've had to do quite a bit of work to repair it. So certainly that will be a big part of our conversation, depending on how we wish to use that park going forward, is how do we do it in a way that's going to stay and going to last, because that has been an ongoing challenge.
Councillor Howe?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We're talking 3 parks that are in one particular area. If you're going to look at, you have to look at the whole of the town of Grimsby and our lakefront. You just can't pick and choose whatever is convenient or that looks good. And some of it has been looked at. There are plans. They have thought about it. But anyways, it's all town of Grimsby.
Anyone else for discussion? Councillor DeFlavio?
Just through you, Chair. So do we have a report on the shoreline that was done in the last 10 years that shows erosion, that shows what we've lost, that we can use as our starting point, going back to what Councillor Howe was talking about? Because I agree, it does need to be the entire town of Grimsby. I think that the areas in the West End have been, because of the developments that have occurred there, have been well protected and have been reinforced, some very recently and some, a decade ago. But I agree, it should be the entire town and any land that we have that's adjacent to the lake. So has that been done in any time recently?
Through the Chair, so quite a few years ago now, we did do some study. Staff have identified Whitaker and Nellis, at least from a parks perspective, as the 2 in greatest need. There are some needs elsewhere, but certainly they're the greatest need. They're where we've seen the most erosion occur and just starting to get to the proximity of a few of our assets. I know that Public Works does look at as well the end of road allowances, and they have that information as well, and we've looked at where we can sort of partner up on any sort of work along those lines. We did some work quite a while ago, actually engaged a shoreline consultant to look at what are our options for the park, because there is different treatments that you can do that have different outcomes. That did look at sort of what the impacts had been over the years, but I don't know that they really got into specific specific data as to how much it's been pulled back over the years, probably would look to our GIS information as sort of our best tool currently to do that. That's probably what we will be looking at. But again, happy to bring some of that information forward that is sort of informing what some of the options are we will be bringing to you in terms of what the design choices are. And just lastly with this, just please do recognize these are big, big projects, the big dollar values and a lot of work for design. So just to manage expectations, it will take some time to do this work. But again, nevertheless, it is in our budget. We do have Whitaker Park, some design work in the budget this year, and Nellis is also in our budget, and I'll bring that all back to you as well.
Councillor DeFlavio?
I'm sorry to belabor it, Chair. There have been grants in the past, significant grants that we've received. There's a Great Lakes Action Fund that I'm familiar with. It's not huge, but it is one of the grants that's out there for shoreline cleanup, habitat type projects, and it's available to municipalities, I think. And I think that it's non-for-profits like what we have down by the water, but also I think municipalities are open to it. But there are a few out there, and they come out all the time, which I'm sure you're more familiar with them than I am. But we were able to get 1.1 million in the past for this kind of thing. So if we can avoid using taxpayers' money, well, it's all taxpayers' money, please don't misunderstand me, but Grimsby taxpayers' money where we can get it from a provincial or federal grant, that'd be awesome. So hopefully we can find some money somewhere else to make these happen sooner than later. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Everybody's good to vote? Okay, all in favor? Okay, and that's carried.
Thank you, Councillor Korstanji. Is there any other business pertaining to the committee? So the next Community Services Committee meeting is scheduled for April 23rd, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. So thank you, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.